each month you're going to get open mic, right?
Right.
The thing about it is we have spots like that here in Cleveland,
Okay.
but I know that publicly we're not really viewed that way. So I did set it in New York for a reason,
Okay.
which caused me to take a trip to New York.
It's research.
Yes,
Right.
I did a lot of market research. I stayed in Jersey. My editor lives in Jersey. I took trips to New York. So I just wanted it to be as accurate as possible to New Yorkers.
Yes.
But that vibe, which is what you're experiencing of Devon's Cafe, it exists in Cleveland, like all over.
Okay,
and
so
even, go
you have
ahead.
to tell me where.
I was going to say, like, even a friend that, and I, and one of the ladies sitting here, we were doing open mics in the city, and we definitely had that similar vibe.
Okay.
But I will have to email you, because
Yes,
there are
okay.
like so many little spots. You can do there's so many open mics in Cleveland. But definitely I appreciate you saying that, because I know that in our culture, in Black culture, and urban culture, we need those spaces that are safe, spaces that reflect our creativity, that are cozy, and it's kind of like a Cheers, but it's like coffee Cheers, like where everybody knows your name, right? And that's what I want my readers to get, is like, let's go to Devon's Cafe, even if it's in a book, you know, because that's where it's popping.
It absolutely, and it was absolutely awesome to hear you say that you plan to continue books with several of these characters, because Denise, I really liked. Of course, I liked Devon. You know, but if I'm really honest, I think Darren was my favorite character.
Okay, Darren.
There was just this genuine kindness, and family was so important to him. So can you talk a little bit about him, because it's Ashley's ex?
It is Ashley's ex, and it's so interesting for you to say Darren, because my readers, which are my friends, were just kind of like, he is getting on their last nerve.
Really?
Yes, just because he was pushing up on Natalie, and he knew that that was Ashley's cousin, and that's like a rule. Like, what are you doing talking to her cousin? You know this is her cousin, you're still pushing up on her.
Right.
But what I really wanted to show with Darren is that he was evolving as well. So one of the reasons he broke up with Ashley, and he says it, is he outgrew her, right?
Yes.
Because she's very shallow and narcissistic and just into her own self. So that was positive, but you see him still in that world, because he's rich and he's blinging, he's doing his thing too.
Absolutely.
But he's so drawn to Natalie because she's the opposite, you know. She's grounding, she's sweet, she has character, so he's drawn to her light. But he opens up about his dad. He opens up about how he doesn't want to just live for the things of this world and be shallow. And that's what I really wanted to show, the complexity in him. But a lot of people aren't feeling him because...
Oh, no, I liked him for that reason, because I saw him growing, right? And where he could kind of shed the, I want to say the shallowness.
Facade, yeah.
But just like, I don't have to keep up, I can just be me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not often we find people in life where we can just be real and be ourselves
That's
and
true.
be authentic.
That's true, and I'll just say this real quick. I did try to show that with Ashley, that she was able to do that with BJ. Like, you kind of see when she's in his home and how she's able to do that. But going back to Darren, I feel like what upset my one friend was that he shows up at the hospital. And, you know, she's like, why he gotta be all up in Ashley's mix, and he's supposed to be trying to get with Natalie, you know. But I wanted it to be offensive to young people, because it happens all the time. So
I have to keep reminding they're like half my age. So so the thing that I did that when I was that probably
me too. It's another book. It's another book.
It's another book. Okay. So these characters are coming back and will play hopefully a different role, a little bit more spotlighted.
Yeah, it just depends. So I'm definitely toying around with the Denise novel. I know at some point that'll happen. So of course there will be her crew will be the Ashley and the, you know, BJ and the Darren and all that. So yeah.
Wow, this is awesome. See, that's one of the great things about reading, and I always talk to writers who write, you know, standalones versus series, and the difference between that, right? Having to keep everything straight. But as a reader, when you can go to a series and the people, like, it's like Cheers, but as a reader, right? Like, I settle in, these are my characters, these are the people that I want to hang out with, and I get to do that, you know, in one of your books. So, or more than one of your books.
And, you know, as a writer, because so many of these characters are kind of different, right? So Devon is older, even though he's dating Natalie, he is older. So his friend group is more of like Lisa, who only does a cameo in When Love Wins, but she's featured in Urban Stories. And so working on her book, it's like, oh, I get to dive into the grown and sexy world. And even when I portray Devon's Cafe, I portray it in Urban Stories from an older 30-something scene. And if you read that in Urban Stories, you'll see by comparison with When Love Wins, it's the young and poppin' scene.
Okay.
So you'll kind of get to see it through the different lenses.
Which is wonderful, right? Because
Yeah.
as readers, we often do the same thing. We'll all read the same book, but because we
Mhm,
come from
mhm.
different experiences, we experience the
That's true.
book a little bit differently. Which
That's
is why
true.
conversations about the book are so cool.
Yeah,
So
to hear
I'm
you-
on Team Darren
I was
right
about
now.
to say, to hear you being pro Darren, I gotta tell my friend about that, because that's the first
Yeah.
that I've heard. I'm sure it's a group of y'all, but
Still, we'll start it here, right?
Yeah, start
Team
it.
Darren.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about When Love Wins and your journey as being self-published.
Whew.
It's
Yeah, so
commendable. I think it's
I
wonderful.
appreciate that. Being self-published is no joke. I often say I feel like it's when you're a double major.
Yes.
Because you are an entrepreneur and you're a writer.
Yes.
So every writer knows it's gonna take a while before you pop or you get recognition, and it's usually gonna take years to even write the book, right? If you want it to be solid, if you want it to
Right.
be good. So you're spending so much of your life pouring into your art, creating this art, and then publishing it, and then it could never get known, right? So if you want to really get recognition as an indie author, that means building your brand, that means building your team, that means the entrepreneurship hustle needs to be there.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for my background in business, because you and I talked about this earlier. All of my skill sets just transposed into this experience with writing, where I'm not just a creative, but I'm also a business person, so that I can market myself well. So it's been a journey. So when I decided 2 years ago to get serious about urban stories,
Yeah.
that's when I did a rebranding. You know, I redid my website, I got new pictures, I started being consistent. I looked at my marketing analytics. I've been blogging forever, but I would blog willy-nilly. It was just kind of like, well, I just feel like writing.
Yeah.
But now it was like, okay, let me look at my marketing analytics. When are people reading my blogs? Okay, Monday morning at 7 a.m., they're going to get a blog Monday morning at 7 a.m. And then I had a friend of mine who invested in me, and he was like, you need to follow up with your blog on your email list during the week to remind them to read the blog. Okay, and then I felt like, oh, I need to be going on lives on social media. So now every Wednesday at 5 o'clock, they're going to get a live to let them know, hey, did you catch the blog? So I have all these mediums where people are reminded of the blog. And that's one benefit I have as an indie author, because you're not going to publish a book until every year, every 2 years. But as a blogger, I can keep spitting out content. So you're always going to see me. So in between these book projects, you're going to see Nicole D. Miller in all these ways.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm joined by Nicole D. Miller, right? So your website?
It is NicoleDMiller.com.
Okay, very easy to remember. I won't ask you what the T's for, but,
I can tell you.
really?
Yeah, my middle name is Dominique.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. All right, secret's out. But I think it's really great. When I think about when I was growing up, it was like appointment television, right? If you weren't there by like 8 o'clock
Yes.
on a Thursday night, you missed 90210, right? Like them's the breaks, right? And so what's interesting that you're doing, which is resonating with so many people, is you're going back to like appointment. We know on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock to look for you live. We know on Monday mornings it's the first thing we're going to see in our inbox,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's really important that it's that consistency,
Yeah.
right? That people start to look for it, and God forbid you miss one. You know, I'm sure you hear about it, like, wait, where's my, you know, Nicole D. Miller fix? It's a Monday, this is gonna set the tone for my week, so.
And you bringing that up, it's like I've been on vacation, I've been in the car, I've been on the plane. I just wrote my latest blog in the airport because I was traveling. So it is about that consistency and showing up.
Yeah, and that's the thing, just show up, and you do so well in so many different mediums and platforms, so in terms of like accessibility for people to find you, and reach you and connect with you, because I think that's the thing you do so well, is just this authentic voice in your blog.
Thank you.
You read it and it's like we're having a conversation right here, but
Thank
like
you.
now I'm gonna hear it in your voice on Monday morning.
Thank you. I really
Different.
appreciate that, because that's my gift, is intimacy, and I really want to share that with others. And I have really close friendships, and I know that they thrive because we've gone deep. And I think people are hungry for intimacy. They're hungry to be known. You know, so my blog is really to reach the reader. Like, hey, I got you. This is what you're going through. This is what I'm
Oh,
going
and it's
through. Let's
always
talk about it.
captured in the subject line. Like there's not one that I've ever gone like, oh, I'll get to it later, because I read the subject line and I was like, oh yeah, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now.
Aw.
So yeah, that makes perfect
Thank
sense.
you. That makes me feel so good because you don't always hear like how your work's affecting people, especially with readers. And I do the same thing when I read books. I never put up reviews. I never reach out to the author, so that makes me feel
No,
good.
it's a joy. It's one of the best things about being a librarian, right? And I probably should have read the job description closely because we don't sit around and read all day. However, when we get a chance to meet the people that write the words that we read, it's a special thing. So I'm glad that you're here today.
Can I just say, because you brought up 90210,
Yes.
at the end of When Love Wins, it's a nod to 90210. So when they're all at the spot, at the barn, and it's New Year's, and they take that group shot, and you see the friend group,
yes,
nod at 90210, yes.
Love it. See, this is great.
80s baby, 90s kid, I got you.
Thank you. So this is, like just one of those wonderful things. There's a difference between belonging and just showing up and being seen. Like people kind of crave belonging, but you have to be intimate, you have to be vulnerable, dive deeper, be a little bit more genuine for those connections to happen. And when you do, blessings.
And that's the goal with the email list. It really is community building. We did that when we did our open mics, and my friends are great community builders, and I've been the recipient of 15 years of community. So recognizing that we have an innate desire to belong, like you said, and my goal is to build community through my writing.
Right, so like now they're going to be, instead of like, parrot heads, we're going to have like Miller heads,
You
that are going to be out throughout
You
the
better
Cleveland
speak
area.
it. I'm taking over.
I was going to say,
Okay.
I'm going to put it out there in the universe, right? So, what's the best thing about being a writer?
Just being a creative, to birth something from nothing and to tap into something inside of you don't even know exists. Like, you could have never told me I could have written a whole novel. Like, I was so intimidated by that. When I look at my journey, it has been a step-by-step progress of getting here and then unleashing the beauty of you that reflects the creator. I think that we all do in our unique way. And so for me, it's like, well, this is my vibe. This is how me and God get down, and so I'm inviting you into that. So it's dope.
Can we talk a little bit about the fact that it's November 1st, right? And what November is? I never get it right.
Yeah, so it's National Novel Writing Month.
Yeah, but it's like there's an acronym and I never get
NaNo? Is it NaNo?
Yeah, NaNoWriMo or something like that.
yeah.
I can never quite get it. But so anybody who's listening or anybody who's here this evening,
get on it.
it's exactly try, right? Sometimes we don't know what we're capable of until we just kind of stop. And pause. We get so caught up in being busy. I gotta do this, I gotta do this, but if you just stop and be still.
Yeah, I know people struggle with time, especially if you have kids and you're married, you have all these responsibilities. So I do one-on-one coaching, and I have a publishing house, and I help other people publish. So one of the things I tell people is 15 minutes a day, like fight for that time, carve out that time. And if you're intentional, you can find 30 minutes a day and see how many words that you have at the end of the month. So don't put all this pressure like, oh, I gotta write a novel, but I have all this stuff going on. 30 minutes a day, what do you have at the end of the month?
That's exactly right. It's part of where Cleveland Reads came from, right? Like to read 1 million books collectively as Cleveland, or spend time reading. And it's that if you kind of make it into smaller, manageable chunks, you kind of surprise yourself at the end of whatever time period you're looking at.
Exactly.
So, because this is Writers Unplugged and it's about Cleveland Reads, can you talk a little bit about why literacy is important to you?
Man, so for me, as an only child, I grew up very lonely. So I didn't have a lot of friends. So my book became my friends. And so when I look back on that, I'm like, man, there was so much purpose. Like, who knew I was going to write books? And me and my mom would go to the library on the weekends. Like, other people would be out with their friends. And I'm like, we're going to the library. Like, I was such a nerd, middle school. But for me, it was escaping into those worlds when you're dealing with some hard things, as a child. And it's really been pivotal in my communication, in my self-confidence. It was a bonding experience with my grandmother. So she was reading adult books, I was reading adult books. I mean, that's just what it was. But I fell in love with urban culture in those books. In the 90s, I would say was a Black renaissance with media, music, TV. So all of that has influenced even my writing, When Love Wins. So I was impacted by urban classics back then, and I really want When Love Wins to impact this generation in the same way. So in a lot of ways, it's like reading has been a lifesaver in some ways, and definitely a friend that's never left.
Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest things is no matter what happens, books are always here. right?
Yes,
And just finding that right one.
exactly.
So I'm joined by local writer Nicole D. Miller. So final 5 questions, okay?
Go for it.
Where's your favorite place to read?
Probably the bathtub. And that's why like Urban Stories has the feet on it, you know?
Yeah.
It's just cozy.
Yeah.
But any cafe, like
Okay.
any cute little cafe is definitely gonna make the cut.
Okay. When you're not writing or working, what is it the thing that you enjoy doing the most?
I like working out, and there is a class that I attend in Cleveland.
Okay.
It's a step class. Shout out to Ari Strong.
Yeah.
But I love music. So for me, when I'm stepping, it is like being at the club. It's like being at a house party. Yeah. It just does something in me where I'm just in my zone. So I would say that is one of the things.
What's the best piece of advice you could give to aspiring writers?
I would say just keep writing, because my writing has elevated so much. Like, I thought I needed a degree in writing to be a good writer, and finding workshops and finding resources and community and seeing how my writing has transcended because of practice. Like, your writing is going to keep elevating as you keep doing it.
Makes perfect sense. So fashion appears a ton in this book. A lot. Ashley in particular, right? With most
fashionista.
She's a fashionista. So I would say you are too, but do you have a favorite designer?
Well, I gravitate to like Michael Kors. I don't have Chanel, but I did get to check out some jewelry in Paris this summer, which was inspiring, and I'm wearing her perfume right now, which is why Ashley does get that opportunity to go to Paris.
Yes.
And they're learning about Coco Chanel in her class, so that was kind of a nod there.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely say Michael Kors is one of them.
Okay.
Coach is another.
Fair.
And I do have Kate Spade too.
Okay.
So it makes the cut.
Okay. I was gonna say, it's hard to choose, right?
Yeah.
It's like choosing your favorite book. Nobody can really do that. If there was an emergency and you had time to only grab one thing, what would you grab?
My cat.
The black cat, right?
Yes. His name is actually BJ.
BJ?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
and I was gonna say it's a nod to BJ in the book, right?
Yes, yes.
Very cool. So I want to say a huge thank you to you, Nicole D. Miller, for joining us this evening, to our tech team for making sure everything goes smoothly, to Marcy, the branch manager of the Huff branch, and her staff for making sure everything went well. And then finally, this has been Writers Unplugged. I'm Jen Jumbo with Cleveland Public Library. So thank you for sharing your love of reading with one another.
Thank you, Jen.